The stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless canvas of black velvet. Commander Elise Voss stood at the helm of the research vessel Aurora, her sharp eyes scanning the data streaming onto the holographic display before her. For years, humanity had dreamed of this moment, the first interstellar expedition to make contact with intelligent life beyond Earth. And now, after months of travel through the cold emptiness of space, they were finally approaching their destination, Dytherus 7. Dytherus 7 was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. From orbit, the planet glowed in hues of pink and lavender, its atmosphere thick with swirling clouds that reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. Scans revealed vast oceans dotted with floating islands, forests of towering crystalline trees, and strange structures that seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. It was beautiful and mysterious. Elise adjusted the headset on her ear, her voice calm but tinged with excitement. "Team, we're about to enter the atmosphere. Everyone, prepare for landing protocols." Her words echoed through the ship's intercom, reaching every corner of the sleek, futuristic vessel. Behind her, Dr. Theo Marlowe, the mission's xenobiologist, double-checked his equipment, while Lieutenant Ava Chen monitored the shuttle's descent trajectory. Each member of the team had trained tirelessly for this day, knowing full well the weight of their responsibility. As the shuttle detached from the main ship and began its descent, the crew felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. They knew almost nothing about the beings who called Dytherus 7 home. All they had were fragments of information gathered from distant observations, signs of intelligence, advanced architecture, and hints of a society vastly different from their own. Would these aliens welcome them? Or would they see humans as intruders? The shuttle broke through the upper layers of the atmosphere, and suddenly, the world below came into sharp focus. The surface was breathtaking. Rivers of glowing water snaked between clusters of bioluminescent plants, casting soft light over the landscape. In the distance, towering spires rose from the ground, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal. These were no ordinary buildings. They appeared to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically, as though synchronized with some unseen heartbeat. "Commander," Ava said, her tone steady but laced with awe, "I'm detecting movement near our designated landing zone." Elise leaned forward, studying the monitor. Sure enough, several figures emerged from behind one of the pulsating towers. They moved gracefully, their forms fluid and otherworldly. These were the inhabitants of Dytherus 7, the Luminara. Their translucent skin emitted a gentle glow, shifting colors with each step they took. Long limbs ended in delicate, webbed hands, and large, multifaceted eyes reflected the ambient light like prisms. "They're watching us," Theo murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He couldn't help but marvel at how alien yet captivating they looked. "Do you think they know we're here?" "I'd say it's pretty obvious," Ava replied dryly, earning a small chuckle from the otherwise tense room. The shuttle touched down gently on a patch of smooth, glass-like terrain. Outside, the air shimmered with energy, and the faint hum of the planet's ecosystem filled the silence. Elise took a deep breath, straightening her uniform. This was it, the moment humanity would take its first step toward bridging worlds. "Everyone, remember why we're here," she said firmly, addressing her team. "We're not just explorers, we're ambassadors. Our actions today will shape the future of relations between our species and theirs. Stay calm, stay respectful, and let's show them what it means to be human." One by one, the crew disembarked, stepping cautiously onto the foreign soil. The Luminara watched silently, their glowing forms flickering with curiosity, or perhaps caution. None of them made a move to approach, but their presence alone was enough to send shivers down the human spines. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, without warning, one of the Luminara stepped forward. A young female, judging by her smaller stature and lighter glow. She tilted her head, studying the humans with wide, unblinking eyes. Slowly, she extended one of her slender arms, her fingers brushing against the edge of Elise's suit. The contact sent a jolt through the commander, not painful, but electric, as though the alien's touch carried some kind of energy. Elise froze, unsure of what to do next. But then, something remarkable happened. The Luminara girl emitted a sound, a melodic hum that resonated deep within the humans' chests. It wasn't speech, exactly, but it conveyed emotion, curiosity, and maybe even joy. "She's trying to communicate," Theo whispered, his scientific mind racing to process everything. "This is incredible." Elise nodded slowly, forcing herself to smile despite the overwhelming strangeness of the situation. "Let's see where this takes us," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. And so, under the pink skies of Dytherus 7, two vastly different species stood face to face for the very first time. Neither knew what the future held, but both sensed that this meeting would change everything, for better or worse. The air was thick with anticipation as the human crew stood frozen, their eyes locked on the young Luminara girl who had dared to approach them. Her glowing form flickered softly, shifting from a pale blue to a warm golden hue, a color that seemed to radiate curiosity and wonder. The melodic hum she emitted filled the silence, resonating like an otherworldly lullaby. It wasn't speech in any traditional sense, but it carried meaning nonetheless, leaving the humans feeling both awestruck and slightly disoriented. Commander Elise Voss took a cautious step forward, her movements deliberate and slow. She didn't want to startle the alien girl or give the impression of aggression. Extending her hand palm up, an earth gesture of peace, she spoke gently, even though she knew the words would mean nothing. "We come in peace," she said, her voice steady despite the knot of nerves twisting in her stomach. To everyone's surprise, the Luminara girl tilted her head again, mimicking Elise's gesture by raising one of her webbed hands. Tentatively, she reached out until her fingertips brushed against Elise's palm. A soft pulse of light traveled up her arm, and for a fleeting moment, Elise felt warmth spread through her body. Not painful, but soothing, almost comforting. It was as if the alien was trying to convey something beyond language, reaching out not just physically but emotionally. Dr. Theo Marlowe, standing nearby with his scanner in hand, couldn't contain his excitement. "This is extraordinary," he whispered to Ava Chin, who stood beside him, her weapon holstered but her hand resting close to it instinctively. "Their bioluminescence isn't just decorative. It's a form of communication. Look at how her colors change based on her emotions." Ava nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "Let's hope those colors stay friendly," she muttered under her breath, keeping a watchful eye on the rest of the Luminara group still lingering behind their glowing companion. While the young female appeared curious and unthreatening, the others hadn't moved closer yet, their forms shimmering faintly in shades of green and silver, colors Theo suspected might signify caution or uncertainty. Encouraged by the initial interaction, Elise decided to try another gesture. Slowly, she crouched down, lowering herself to appear less imposing. Then, with exaggerated care, she pointed to herself and said clearly, "Elise." She tapped her chest twice for emphasis before pointing to Theo and saying, "Theo," then to Ava and repeating the process. For a moment, the Luminara girl simply stared, her multifaceted eyes glittering like tiny galaxies. But then, to everyone's amazement, she raised a finger and touched her own chest, emitting a series of musical tones that sounded almost like laughter. When she finished, she pointed to Elise and repeated the gesture, mimicking the act of naming. "She understands," Theo exclaimed, nearly dropping his scanner in his excitement. "She's associating sounds with identity. This could be our first step toward real communication." Elise smiled, relief washing over her. "Good work, everyone," she said quietly, addressing her team. "Let's keep building on this." As if emboldened by the success of the exchange, the young Luminara girl began experimenting further. She noticed Elise's hair, a feature completely foreign to her species, and reached out hesitantly, running her fingers along its length. Her glow shifted to a bright pink, signaling fascination. Encouraged by her reaction, Elise laughed softly and gestured for the others to join in. One by one, the humans introduced themselves, using simple gestures and repetition to reinforce the concept of names. The Luminara girl responded enthusiastically, attempting to mimic their movements and even producing soft hums that vaguely resembled human syllables. Her efforts were clumsy but endearing, drawing quiet chuckles from the crew. However, not all interactions went smoothly. When Lieutenant Ava accidentally stumbled over a patch of glowing moss, the ground beneath her feet lit up in response, sending ripples of light across the area. Startled, several of the Luminara watching from afar let out sharp bursts of red light, a clear sign of alarm. Their bodies stiffened, and some began retreating toward the safety of their pulsating structures. "Easy, Ava," Elise cautioned, holding up her hands to signal calm. Turning back to the young Luminara girl, she knelt once more, speaking softly and making sure her movements remained non-threatening. Gradually, the tension eased, and the aliens returned to their previous state of cautious curiosity. By now, the entire group of Luminara had grown bolder, inching closer to observe the strange visitors. One particularly adventurous individual, a slightly older male with longer tendrils trailing from his arms, began copying Theo's every move. When the scientist adjusted his glasses, the alien tilted his head dramatically, earning amused giggles from his peers. The scene quickly devolved into playful mimicry, with both humans and Luminara laughing or humming at each other's antics. Despite the levity, there were moments of profound realization. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the landscape in a soft lavender glow, Elise found herself marveling at the sheer improbability of the situation. Here they were, two entirely different species separated by millions of light years, finding common ground through gestures and shared curiosity. For all their differences, there was a universality to the desire to connect, to understand and be understood. But as night fell and the glowing towers around them pulsed rhythmically, casting dancing shadows across the terrain, Elise couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning. These creatures, so innocent and curious, clearly had much more to teach, and perhaps much to learn as well. And while the initial meeting had gone better than anyone could have hoped, she knew that challenges lay ahead. For now, though, the humans and the Luminara basked in the magic of discovery, united by a bond that transcended words. Under the starlit skies of Dytherus 7, two worlds had taken their first tentative steps toward understanding one another. The sun had fully set on Dytherus 7, and the landscape was bathed in an ethereal glow. The bioluminescent flora pulsed softly, creating a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the breathing of the planet itself. The humans and the Luminara stood together under this alien sky, their connection growing stronger with each passing moment. Yet, despite the progress made through gestures and mimicry, communication remained a fragile bridge, one that required constant care and innovation. Commander Elise Voss watched as the young Luminara girl who had first approached them, now affectionately nicknamed Syra by Theo, though they couldn't be sure if it matched her true name, continued to experiment with human movements. She had taken a particular interest in Ava's utility belt, reaching out to touch its metallic surface with wide-eyed fascination. Her fingers traced the edges of the pouches, emitting soft bursts of yellow light as she marveled at the texture and weight. "She's like a child discovering something new," Ava observed, her tone softer now, less guarded than before. "It's almost endearing." Elise nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "They're not just curious. They're learning. Every interaction is teaching them about us, just as we're learning about them." She paused, then added, "But we need to find a way to deepen that understanding. Gestures alone won't cut it forever." Dr. Theo Marlowe stepped forward, his mind racing with possibilities. "We've established basic concepts like names and objects," he said, tapping his scanner thoughtfully. Now we need to introduce more complex ideas, like emotions, intentions, or even abstract concepts like trust. Music might help here. It's universal in its own way. With that, Theo pulled out a small handheld device from his bag, a compact synthesizer capable of producing simple melodies. He hesitated for a moment, unsure how the Luminara would react, but curiosity got the better of him. Pressing a few keys, he played a gentle tune, a lilting melody reminiscent of Earth's classical compositions. The notes hung in the air, blending seamlessly with the hums of the glowing forest around them. To everyone's surprise, Scifi responded almost immediately. Emitting a series of melodic tones of her own, she began to harmonize with Theo's music. Her voice wasn't limited to single notes. It flowed like liquid light, layering pitches and rhythms in ways that defied human comprehension. Other Luminara joined in, their combined sounds weaving into a symphony that resonated deep within the humans' chests. It was both beautiful and overwhelming, a reminder of just how different, and yet how connected, their species truly were. "This isn't random," Theo whispered excitedly, his eyes shining with discovery. "They're using sound patterns to express meaning. This could be their primary mode of communication." Encouraged by the success of the musical exchange, Elise decided to try another approach. Pulling up a holographic translator on her wrist console, she activated a pre-programmed sequence designed to display visual symbols alongside spoken words. Pointing to herself, she said, "Elise," while the hologram displayed a stick figure labeled with her name. Then she pointed to Scifi and gestured for her to respond. Scifi tilted her head, studying the hologram intently. After a moment, she reached out and touched the projection, causing it to ripple like water. A burst of pink light emanated from her fingertips, forming a swirling pattern in the air, a shape that looked vaguely like a flower with spiraling petals. She repeated the gesture several times, humming softly each time. "She's giving us her name," Theo exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. "That symbol, it's her identifier." Elise smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "So we're making progress. Symbols, sounds, gestures. We're piecing it together bit by bit." As the night wore on, the exchanges became more intricate. The humans taught the Luminara simple phrases like "thank you" and "friend," reinforcing the words with gestures and holograms. In return, the aliens introduced the humans to their glowing flora, demonstrating how certain plants could be used for light, nourishment, or even healing. One particularly fascinating plant emitted a soft, pulsating glow when touched, and Scifi demonstrated how its energy could be transferred to other objects simply by brushing her tendrils against them. But not all interactions were smooth. At one point, Lieutenant Ava accidentally triggered a defensive mechanism in a nearby crystalline tree by stepping too close. The structure emitted a sharp, high-pitched whine, startling both the humans and the Luminara. Several of the aliens retreated quickly, their forms flashing red with alarm. It took several minutes of calming gestures and soothing tones from Scifi to reassure everyone that no harm was intended. "It's going to take time," Elise reminded her team later, as they reviewed the day's events back inside the shuttle. "Every mistake is a lesson, for both sides. We can't expect perfection overnight." Despite the challenges, there were moments of pure wonder. Near the end of their session, Scifi surprised the humans by taking Theo's hand and leading him toward a cluster of glowing towers. With exaggerated care, she used her tendrils to draw patterns in the air, patterns that seemed to correspond to specific locations. When Theo pointed to one of the symbols and raised his eyebrows questioningly, Scifi nodded enthusiastically and tugged gently on his arm, urging him to follow. "She's inviting us somewhere," Theo realized, his voice tinged with awe. This could be huge, an opportunity to see their world from their perspective. Elise exchanged a glance with Ava, who gave a reluctant nod. "If we want to build trust, we have to meet them halfway," the commander said firmly. "Let's go, but stay alert." And so, guided by Scifi and her companions, the humans ventured deeper into the heart of the Luminara civilization. As they walked, the glowing structures around them seemed to shift subtly, responding to their presence. The ground beneath their feet pulsed faintly, as if alive, and the air carried a faint hum that resonated with every step they took. Though uncertainty lingered in the back of their minds, the humans couldn't deny the sense of wonder that filled their hearts. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was walking alongside an alien species, not as conquerors or intruders, but as guests eager to learn and share. Each step brought them closer to understanding, and with it, the promise of a future where two vastly different worlds could coexist in harmony. Under the shimmering skies of Dytherus 7, the seeds of friendship had been planted. All that remained was to nurture them, and hope they would grow strong enough to withstand whatever storms lay ahead. Guided by Scifi and her companions, the humans ventured deeper into the heart of the Luminara civilization. The glowing towers that had first caught their attention from orbit now loomed overhead, their surfaces pulsating rhythmically like living organisms. Each step revealed new wonders, a labyrinthine network of crystalline pathways, streams of luminescent water that flowed upward against gravity, and clusters of bioluminescent flora that seemed to hum softly in response to the humans' presence. The journey was both awe-inspiring and disorienting. The air carried a faint vibration, as though the planet itself were alive and breathing. Every structure they passed appeared to shift slightly, adapting to their movements. It wasn't just architecture, it was an ecosystem, a living entity that thrived on connection and interaction. Theo couldn't help but marvel at the complexity of it all. "This isn't just a city," he whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "It's a symbiotic organism. Everything here is interconnected." Scifi led them confidently, her tendrils trailing behind her as she emitted soft bursts of light to guide the way. Occasionally, she would pause to point out specific features, gesturing toward a cluster of glowing spires or mimicking the sound of rippling water to draw their attention. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and even Ava, who had initially been the most cautious among the group, found herself relaxing slightly, her hand no longer hovering near her weapon. As they moved further into the alien metropolis, the humans began to notice subtle differences in the environment. Some areas glowed brighter than others, casting intricate patterns across the ground. In one particularly striking section, the walls of the structures shimmered with what looked like constellations, tiny pinpricks of light-forming shapes that shifted and changed as they walked past. Ellis paused to study them, her brow furrowed in thought. "These might represent stories or histories," she suggested. "Maybe they're trying to tell us something about their culture." Theo nodded eagerly, pulling out his scanner. "If we can decode these patterns, we could unlock a wealth of knowledge. They're clearly advanced. They've built this entire world around harmony and balance." But not everyone shared their sense of wonder. As they approached a central plaza surrounded by towering, pulsating spires, a group of elder Luminara emerged from the shadows. Unlike the younger members of their species, these beings radiated a more subdued energy. Their skin glowed faintly in shades of deep blue and violet, and their movements were slow, deliberate, almost regal. Their eyes, larger and more multifaceted than those of the younger Luminara, locked onto the humans with an intensity that made the crew uneasy. "They don't look happy to see us," Ava murmured under her breath, instinctively moving closer to Elise. Ellis raised a hand to signal calm, keeping her expression neutral. She knew this moment was inevitable. The elders had likely been observing them since their arrival, weighing whether to allow contact or drive them away. Now, it seemed, they had decided to intervene. One of the elders stepped forward, its form taller and more imposing than any Luminara they had encountered so far. Its tendrils hung motionless at its sides, and its glow pulsed in steady intervals of red and black, a stark contrast to the warm hues emitted by Scifi and her friends. When it spoke, or rather, emitted a series of deep, resonant tones, the sound reverberated through the plaza, sending shivers down the human spines. The message was clear, even without translation. You do not belong here. Silura immediately positioned herself between the humans and the elders, her glow shifting rapidly between pink and gold. She emitted a melodic counterpoint to the elders' rumbling tones, her voice carrying a note of defiance. For a tense moment, the two sides faced off, the air crackling with unspoken tension. "What's happening?" Ava asked quietly, her grip tightening on her utility belt. "She's defending us," Theo replied, his voice tinged with admiration. "She's telling them we mean no harm." Elise watched the exchange carefully, her mind racing. This was a turning point, a cultural divide within the Luminara society itself. On one side stood tradition and caution, on the other, curiosity and progress. And Syra, bold and fearless, had chosen to stand with humanity. After what felt like an eternity, the elder lowered its gaze, its glow dimming slightly. It let out another low tone before retreating back into the shadows, followed by the rest of its group. The confrontation was over for now, but the implications lingered in the air. Syra turned to face the humans, her glow returning to its usual bright hues. She gestured for them to follow, leading them toward a massive structure at the center of the plaza. As they approached, the building's surface began to shimmer, revealing an entrance that seemed to open organically, as if inviting them inside. "This feels significant," Elise said softly, addressing her team. "Whatever happens next, it's going to shape how they see us, and how we see them." Inside, the chamber was unlike anything the humans had ever experienced. The walls pulsed with light, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across the room. At the center stood a pedestal-like formation, its surface covered in swirling patterns that resembled the constellations they had seen earlier. Syra approached it and placed her hands on the surface, causing the patterns to shift and rearrange themselves into new forms. "She's showing us their history," Theo realized, his voice trembling with excitement. "This must be some kind of archive, a record of their past." As the images played out, the humans witnessed glimpses of the Luminara's evolution, their ancestors emerging from the oceans, their cities growing from simple coral-like formations into the sprawling metropolis they now inhabited. There were moments of triumph and hardship, of unity and division. And finally, there was a vision of the present, their first encounter with humanity, depicted as a ripple spreading across the surface of a vast ocean. "It's beautiful," Elise whispered, her voice tinged with emotion. "They're sharing their story with us. That's a gift." But the elder's presence still loomed large in her mind. While Syra and her peers embraced change, others clung to tradition, wary of outsiders disrupting their way of life. The humans were walking the delicate line, balancing hope against uncertainty. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Syra took Elise's hand once more, her glow steady and reassuring. Though communication remained imperfect, her message was clear: stay, learn, grow together. Under the shimmering skies of Dytherus 7, the humans realized they were no longer mere visitors. They were participants in a story much larger than themselves. And as daunting as the challenges ahead might be, they couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. For the first time, humanity had been invited, not just to observe, but to belong. The days following the humans' visit to the glowing archive chamber marked a turning point in their relationship with the Luminara. Syra and her companions had grown bolder, eagerly guiding the crew through more of their vibrant world, while teaching them snippets of their culture. Yet, despite the progress, tension simmered beneath the surface. The elders, though retreating after their initial confrontation, remained watchful, silent observers who seemed to disapprove of humanity's presence. Commander Elise Voss could feel the weight of their scrutiny every time she stepped outside the shuttle. Though Syra's friendship offered reassurance, the divide within the Luminara society was undeniable. Some embraced change, seeing the humans as an opportunity for growth. Others viewed them as intruders threatening the delicate balance of their world. It was a cultural crossroads, one that mirrored humanity's own struggles throughout history when faced with the unknown. One evening, under the lavender glow of Dytherus Seven's twin moons, the humans were invited to participate in what appeared to be a ceremonial gathering. The event took place in the same central plaza where they had first encountered the elders. This time, however, the atmosphere felt different, not hostile, but charged with anticipation. The glowing towers pulsed in unison, casting intricate patterns across the ground, and the air vibrated with melodic hums emitted by dozens of Luminara gathered around. Elise and her team approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Scifi greeted them warmly, her tendrils trailing behind her as she led them to a raised platform at the center of the plaza. There, a circle of bioluminescent stones formed a makeshift stage, surrounded by the assembled Luminara. Their forms shimmered in various colors, some soft and inviting, others deep and reserved, but all radiated a shared sense of purpose. "What's happening?" Ava whispered, her hand resting on her utility belt just in case. "This feels formal." "I think it's some kind of ritual," Theo replied, his eyes wide with fascination. "Look, they're arranging themselves in groups. Maybe this is how they celebrate or honor something." Elise nodded, keeping her posture relaxed but alert. She scanned the crowd, noticing the elders standing apart from the others, their glows dimmed to muted blues and silvers. They didn't join the ceremony directly but watched intently, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the humans. As the hums grew louder, forming a harmonious symphony, Scifi stepped forward, positioning herself beside Elise. Her glow shifted to a brilliant gold, signaling importance, or perhaps urgency. With deliberate movements, she extended her tendrils toward Elise's arms, brushing them lightly before beginning to weave strands of her own luminous essence around Elise's skin. The sensation was unlike anything Elise had ever experienced. Each strand felt warm and alive, pulsing gently as it wrapped around her forearms in intricate patterns. The light intertwined seamlessly, creating glowing designs that resembled constellations, the same ones they had seen in the archive chamber. As Scifi worked, other young Luminara joined in, adding their own threads of light until Elise's arms were adorned with radiant markings. "It's beautiful," Theo murmured, awestruck. "But what does it mean?" Before anyone could answer, the elders let out a collective rumble, a deep, resonant sound that silenced the entire gathering. Their glows flared red, and several of them began moving closer to the platform, their movements stiff with disapproval. One elder stepped forward, its tendrils rigid as it emitted a series of sharp tones directed at Scifi. "She's defying tradition," Ava guessed, her voice low. "Whatever this act means, it's clearly forbidden." Scifi stood her ground, her glow unwavering despite the elders' protests. Emitting a melodic counterpoint to their harsh tones, she addressed the crowd, her voice carrying a note of defiance mixed with determination. Though the humans couldn't understand the specifics, the message was clear: change is necessary. For a moment, the plaza fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, another group of younger Luminara stepped forward, aligning themselves with Scifi. Their combined glow brightened the area, creating a dazzling display of unity. Slowly, hesitantly, some of the elders began to retreat, their forms dimming as they returned to the shadows. When the ceremony ended, the humans were left breathless, not just from the visual spectacle, but from the profound implications of what had just occurred. Scifi turned to Elise, her expression calm yet resolute. Placing one tendril gently on the glowing markings adorning Elise's arms, she emitted a soft hum, a sound that seemed to convey gratitude, acceptance, and trust. "What did she do to you?" Ava asked, her tone laced with both curiosity and concern. Elise studied the glowing patterns on her arms, feeling their warmth spread through her body. "I don't know exactly," she admitted, "but I think this is their way of bonding, of saying we belong here." Theo nodded thoughtfully. "It's symbolic, an act of inclusion. They've never done this with outsiders before. That's why the elders reacted so strongly. Ava frowned, still wary. And now, what happens next? Are we supposed to reciprocate somehow? We'll figure it out, Elise said firmly, her voice steady. For now, we honor their gesture. We show them that we're worthy of their trust. As the humans returned to the shuttle later that night, the glowing markings on Elise's arms continued to shine brightly, even in the dim interior of the vessel. They served as a constant reminder of the bond forged between two species and the responsibility that came with it. For better or worse, humanity had been marked as allies of the Luminara. Back aboard the Aurora, the crew reflected on the day's events. While excitement buzzed among them, there was also an underlying awareness of the challenges ahead. The elders' resistance wouldn't disappear overnight, and tensions could escalate if not handled carefully. But for now, hope burned brightly, fueled by the courage of Syra and her peers. Under the shimmering skies of Dytherus 7, humanity had taken another step toward bridging worlds. And though the path forward remained uncertain, one thing was clear: the unthinkable act performed by the Luminara had changed everything. For both species, the glowing markings on Commander Elise Voss's arms had become a symbol of hope and tension. Each time she stepped outside the shuttle, the Luminara reacted differently. The younger ones, like Syra and her peers, greeted her with warmth and melodic hums, their lights flickering in cheerful hues whenever they saw the radiant patterns adorning her skin. But the elders remained distant, their glows dimmed to icy shades of blue and gray. Their disapproval was palpable, a silent reminder that the bond between humans and Luminara was still fragile. Days turned into weeks as the crew continued their efforts to build trust. They worked alongside the younger Luminara, learning about their technology, culture, and way of life. In return, the humans shared knowledge of Earth, its history, its challenges, and its triumphs. Through gestures, music, and visual aids, they exchanged ideas, slowly bridging the gap between their species. Yet beneath the surface of cooperation, cracks began to show. One morning, as the sun rose over Dytherus 7, casting soft lavender light across the landscape, an alarm blared through the Aurora. Lieutenant Ava Chen rushed to the control panel, her expression tense. "Commander," she called out sharply, "we've got a problem." Elise joined her at the console, her brow furrowing as she studied the readings. "What is it?" "There's unusual seismic activity near the central plaza," Ava explained, pointing to the holographic display. "It's not just localized, it's spreading. If this continues, parts of the city could collapse." Dr. Theo Marlowe, who had been examining samples of glowing flora, looked up from his work. "Could it be natural? Or is it something else?" "We don't know yet," Elise replied, her voice firm but calm. "But we can't ignore it. Gather the team. We need to investigate." As the humans approached the affected area, they found the Luminara already mobilizing. Young members of the species worked tirelessly to stabilize structures, using their tendrils to weave glowing threads around weakened sections of the towers. The elders supervised from afar, their forms rigid with concern. When Syra spotted the humans arriving, she hurried over, her glow shifting rapidly between yellow and green, a sign of urgency. "They're trying to reinforce the buildings," Theo observed, watching as the Luminara wove intricate patterns of light into the pulsating walls. "But it's not enough. They're struggling." Elise nodded, addressing her team. "We have to help them. Ava, set up structural scanners. Theo, analyze the ground composition. Let's see if we can identify the source of the instability." Working together, the humans and Luminara combined their technologies and skills. Using portable stabilizers brought from the Aurora, the crew reinforced key areas of the city, while Theo studied the soil for signs of underlying weaknesses. Meanwhile, Syra and her companions showed the humans how to use their glowing flora to channel energy into the foundations, strengthening them temporarily. Despite their best efforts, the tremors grew stronger. Fissures began to form in the ground. sending streams of glowing water cascading downward. Panic spread among the Luminara, their usual harmonious hums replaced by sharp bursts of red light. Even the elders, who had remained aloof until now, joined the effort, their deep rumbles coordinating rescue operations. "Commander," Ava shouted over the chaos, "there's a major fault line forming directly beneath the central tower. If it collapses, the entire plaza could go down with it." Elise turned to Syra, who hovered anxiously nearby. Pointing to the tower, then mimicking the motion of a falling object, she tried to convey the urgency of the situation. Syra's eyes widened in understanding, and she immediately gestured for her fellow Luminara to follow her toward the base of the structure. "We need to redirect the energy flow," Theo said suddenly, snapping his fingers. "Their towers are alive. They respond to stimuli. If we can channel the seismic energy elsewhere, we might be able to stabilize the area." "But how?" Ava asked, her tone skeptical. "They're glowing plants," Elise realized, connecting the dots. "They're conductive. We can use them to create a diversion." With Syra's guidance, the humans and Luminara worked side by side, planting clusters of bioluminescent flora along the fault line. As the tremors intensified, the plants absorbed the excess energy, redirecting it harmlessly into the air. Slowly, the shaking subsided, and the once precarious towers stabilized. When the crisis passed, both species stood exhausted but victorious. The elders, who had initially resisted humanity's presence, now watched silently, their glows softened slightly. One elder stepped forward, emitting a low, resonant tone that seemed to carry gratitude, or perhaps acknowledgement. For the first time, there was no hostility in their gaze. Syra approached Elise, her glow steady and warm. She placed one tendril gently on the markings still shining brightly on Elise's arms, humming softly. It was a gesture of thanks, but also of unity. The bond forged during the ceremony had been tested and proven strong. That night, back aboard the Aurora, the crew gathered to reflect on the day's events. "We did good out there," Ava admitted grudgingly, though a hint of pride crept into her voice. "Even the elders seemed to respect us now." "It wasn't just us," Elise corrected gently. "It was teamwork. Without the Luminara, we couldn't have done it. And without us, they might not have succeeded either." Theo nodded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This proves something important, that collaboration transcends differences. We may come from different worlds, but when we work together, we're stronger." As the humans prepared for bed, Elise lingered by the viewport, gazing out at the glowing city below. The markings on her arms pulsed faintly, a constant reminder of the connection she shared with the Luminara. Though challenges lay ahead, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had taken another step toward building a lasting alliance, one that would require patience, understanding, and mutual respect. Under the shimmering skies of Dytherus 7, hope burned brighter than ever. Together, two species had faced adversity and emerged stronger. And though the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, the foundation they had built promised a future where harmony might prevail. The time had come for the humans to leave Dytherus 7. After weeks of exploration, discovery, and shared challenges, the crew of the Aurora prepared for their journey back to Earth. The bond they had forged with the Luminara was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced, a fragile yet profound connection that transcended language, culture, and species. As the shuttle readied itself for departure, the atmosphere in the central plaza was bittersweet. Commander Elise Voss stood at the edge of the glowing platform, her arms still adorned with the radiant markings gifted by Syra. The patterns shimmered softly, as if alive, pulsing in harmony with the bioluminescent city around them. Beside her, Dr. Theo Marlowe double-checked his equipment, ensuring that all data collected during their stay, samples of glowing flora, recordings of Luminara communication, and detailed scans of their living architecture, was safely stored. Lieutenant Ava Chen supervised the final loading of supplies, her usual stoic demeanor softened by the weight of the moment. Syra and her companions gathered nearby, their forms flickering faintly in shades of lavender and gold. They had grown attached to the humans, their curiosity transforming into friendship over the course of their shared experiences. Now, faced with goodbye, their melodic hums carried a note of sadness. Syra stepped forward, her tendrils brushing lightly against Elise's hand one last time. Her glow shifted to a deep pink, signaling both gratitude and sorrow. "We'll never forget you," Elise said softly, knowing the words were meaningless without translation, but hoping her tone conveyed sincerity. She gestured to herself, then pointed to Syra, mimicking the motions they had used when first learning each other's names. "Friends." Syra tilted her head, emitting a soft burst of light that seemed to echo agreement. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and placed something small and glowing into Elise's palm. It was a fragment of one of the bioluminescent plants, a tiny shard that pulsed with steady light. Theo gasped quietly, recognizing its significance immediately. "They're giving us a piece of their world," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This could revolutionize medicine or energy systems back on Earth." Elise nodded, closing her fingers gently around the gift. "We'll honor it," she promised, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. Turning to her team, she signaled that it was time to go. As the humans boarded the shuttle, the Luminara watched silently, their lights dimming slightly in unison. Even the elders, who had once been so resistant, stood among the crowd, their glows muted but steady. For the first time, there was no hostility in their gaze, only quiet acknowledgement of what had been achieved. Once aboard the Aurora, the crew took their positions, preparing for liftoff. Through the viewport, they watched as the glowing city grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing beneath the swirling clouds of Dytherus 7's atmosphere. The planet's beauty lingered in their minds, a vivid reminder of the wonders they had witnessed, and the responsibilities they now carried. Back in the safety of space, Elise addressed her team. "We've done more than just make contact," she began, her voice firm but tinged with emotion. "We've laid the groundwork for something extraordinary, an alliance between two species that could shape the future of both our worlds. But this is only the beginning." She paused, glancing at the glowing shard Theo held carefully in his hands. "When we return to Earth, we'll share what we've learned, not just about the Luminara, but about ourselves. Their way of life teaches us the value of harmony, adaptation, and unity. If we can apply those lessons here, we might find solutions to some of our own problems." Theo nodded enthusiastically. "And we'll bring gifts too. Blueprints for sustainable energy systems, agricultural techniques, and medical advancements inspired by their technology. This isn't just about taking, it's about giving back." Ava crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "It won't be easy. People on Earth will have questions. Some might even see the Luminara as a threat. But if we handle this right, we can pave the way for peaceful coexistence." Elise smiled faintly. "That's why we're here, to lead by example. Humanity has a chance to prove that we're capable of growth, of understanding, of reaching across the stars to build bridges instead of walls." As the Aurora continued its journey home, the crew reflected on everything they had experienced. The glowing markings on Elise's arms remained bright, a permanent symbol of the bond forged between humans and Luminara. Though they were leaving Dytherus 7 behind, they carried its essence with them, a reminder of what was possible when two vastly different worlds chose to connect. On Dytherus 7, the Luminara gathered once more in the central plaza, their forms flickering softly under the twin moons. Syra gazed skyward, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the distant stars. Somewhere out there, amidst the vastness of space, the humans traveled onward, carrying the hope of a shared future. And though the distance between their worlds was immense, the connection they had built burned brightly, a beacon of possibility in an uncertain universe. For both species, the journey was far from over. Challenges would arise, misunderstandings would occur, and the path ahead would require patience and perseverance. But as long as the light of friendship endured, As long as the glowing shard pulsed steadily in human hands and the radiant markings shone on Elise's skin, there was reason to believe that unity was within reach.